Hello guys, welcome to the workshop. This is Introduction to Scales and Melody for Ukulele. Um, so we're going to be working through a Google slideshow today. That's my kind of teaching notes, and the good thing about that is that it's sort of laid out very small, kind of piece by piece, bite size all the way along. So if there's any part that gives you trouble, you can just go back to the top of that one slide. It's not like a big long thing. They're just little bite-sized pieces. And what it aims to do is to teach you everything you need to know about the system of music theory in order to get set up playing scales. Now, the way that this is often conventionally taught on either ukulele or on guitar or anything like that is that they tend to base it off a tab, and teaching scales by tab I think is kind of a bad idea because it gives the incorrect perception that all of the scales are different from each other, that they're all unique things that just need to be learned one by one, like C major is different to D major is different to E major. And that means that if you were to sit down and you were to learn a C major scale, by the time you move on to C sharp major, you think it's a completely different thing. And that way, a C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, all of these guys, all of these scales are learned like they're different. And that means there's 12 different scales to learn just to learn your major scales. And that's a terrible idea. If you come at it from the direction of theory and you have all of the theory stuff laid out and you're comfortable with it, then major scales are one formula. So you only have to learn one thing. And that means this continues on if you go to do minor scales. If you learn your formula for minor scales, well then that's 2 formulas you've learned so far versus 24. Okay, and if you go to another scale, that's 3 formulas versus, here's where I'm bad at maths. You're seeing me having barely passed maths there. I tried to add 12 on. I'm not even going to try. I'll get the numbers wrong. So that's the thing. A lot of people think you have to be kind of really academic in order to work with scales. I got a D in past maths and now teach the stuff. So you don't have to be good at maths. When I say the word formula, you don't need to cower in fear. It's like, trust me, it's a small thing little thing that you learn, and it's fine. Okay, so we'll actually, did I send you on the link? You found it. Cool. She's the brains of the operation. Okay.
Don't forget to share your screen.
Oh yeah. Oh, is it not shared at the moment?
No,
It's just me.
it's everyone.
Oh yeah. No, that's fine. That's what it's meant to be.
Cool.
I wanted to give the sense of a community. That's my co-host off camera. Say hi to Lily. Ah. Okay. So we're gonna. Yeah. I suppose there's no point in me saying does that make sense when all of you guys are muted. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, I guess. Good stuff. Okay, so that would be the kind of the headline version of why you would bother to learn scales and things like that from the perspective of music theory. Is that if you do it the other way, it's kind of a nice. The other way is sort of nice on day one, but it's a bad system long term because you could sit there learning scales for years and years and years, treating them all as different things. And I would say as soon as you get to scale number 20, you've probably forgotten scale number 1. So it's not a great way of going about it. But if you know the theory, then there's just a handful of formulas and you got all the scales. Okay, so with that out of the way, I am going to get into the slideshow. So this will be scales for ukulele players. I've broken it down into 9 sections, and well, there's only 8 covered in this slideshow, but we'll get stuck in. So this is a dank meme I made today. Tabs? Where we're going, we don't need tabs. Okay, we're going to get stuck in on the musical alphabet. Now, you guys are probably familiar with, this is a bit of presumed knowledge, but I presume you're comfortable with your English letter alphabet. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now, you don't even have to remember the rest of the alphabet. It's just up to G. Now, each one of these notes has a note in between. And there's 2 different ways of writing it, but we're just going to concentrate on the one on the top. So After A, there would be A sharp. Now, if some of you may not have encountered this symbol here, this little symbol, is the symbol for sharp. And if you put it beside a letter, it basically means one up from that letter. So if this is A, the note above it would be A sharp. So, and moving from left to right along the alphabet like this is going up in pitch, and moving right to left would be going down in pitch. Okay, so it would go A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and the alphabet would begin again in what is called a new octave. So it would be like going back to the start. Okay. Now, each one of the letters has one of the notes in between them. So you can see them there, except for 2 places along the alphabet. One, there's no note in between B and C, and the other place where there's no note is between E and F. So this would go A sharp, B, and instead of going to a B sharp, it would go straight to C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, and instead of an E sharp, it would go straight to F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. Okay, so I'm going to go back out to the window and see. Have I lost you guys? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. Okay. Hudson, was that a jokey thumbs down or an actual thumbs down?
Well, you see, you said, have I lost you? And then thumbs up for yes, and thumbs down for no. So no, you haven't lost me, but that was weird.
Okay, I'll try to reduce my amount of double negatives.
That's why I was like, I'm not used to this.
Sorry, you were far more clever than me, Hudson. Thanks. So just
sorry, for
next
understanding.
Time. Okay.
Is it up for understanding?
I'll go. Did you all understand that? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. Sorry about that. Did you or did you not? Definitely didn't. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm joking. Okay, we'll go for thumbs up for yes and thumbs down for no. Alright, thanks guys. So, right. Hopefully you're all comfortable on that sharp symbol. There is this other symbol. Now we're not going to refer to that in this exercise, but in case you're wondering what this bottom row is, it's using the flat symbol. And the flat symbol is basically the opposite of the sharp symbol. So the sharp symbol meant one up, and the flat symbol means one down. So in effect, if you wrote this note as a B flat, it would be the same as an A sharp. Exactly the same note to hear. So if you played it on the instrument, they would be the same thing. So you could describe this as A, B flat, B, C, B flat. Okay, so we're not really going to be going into that, but I just wanted to explain it in case anybody was wondering what it is. For the purposes of this exercise, we're only going to refer to sharps. So it'll just go A sharp, B, C, C sharp, etc. Alright. So this is where we start to look at the ukulele. The musical alphabet applies from here, being low, and moving up the neck would be going up high. Or down here would be low, and working your way up would go higher and higher. So that would be going up the alphabet, and that would be going down the alphabet. So you can see then when you look at the rest of the strings, they work on the same format, but they just start from a different note. So if you looked at your E string, for example, your second string from the bottom, so that one there, if you hit your E string, that would simply start at E in the alphabet and then go F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and the alphabet begins again. Okay, so right. So did that make sense? Cool. Right, so the next one. Yeah, moving from your lowest note to your highest note can be quite intuitive on some instruments. So on piano, for example, starting simply on the left hand side would give you your lowest note, and if you walked up along the keyboard it would just go higher, 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 nice and simple until you get to the end and you play the highest note. Now playing a stringed instrument is going to be a little bit more complicated because you have multiple strings. So doing this takes a little bit of figuring out on the uke. So the most common one that you encounter will be a high G. And a high G has a thin fourth string. So if you're looking at mine, you can see that this fourth string is kind of thin. You can see it kind of better in the photograph, I guess. So in this photograph you can see that this string is thin. It's thinner than the C string. Okay, the other kind of uke that you're likely to encounter would be a low G. And your low G has a thick, low-pitched fourth string. Alright, so that is a bit of a game changer in terms of your lowest note on your instrument. So if we're trying to think of our ukulele like a piano, well, it depends on which one you're playing. So are you playing a high G or are you playing a low G? So I suppose the shortest, briefest way to find out for you guys is put your hand up if you're playing a low G. There's two. Alright, so most of you guys are high G. Right, so basically the low G guys, you're going to have to look at the second image. So the first image is going to be set up for the more normal conventional high G uke, and the second image is going to be for the low Gs. Okay, so you can see here this would be for high G ukulele, and if we were to start on our lowest note on high G, it would be here. It would be the C string open. So we'd be playing the third string open. And this is how you would play the instrument chromatically. So chromatic would be just, it's a fancy word for just playing every single note from low to high. So if we started at the bottom of our instrument, it would be here. It would be the C string played open. Now you could just continue up along your C string, but eventually at some point you're going to hit the same note as the next string. So see the way if we continued up here we'd get to an E note would be here. But the thing is, there's no point in playing this E note when we have an E string nice and easy there. So the thinking behind this is, the thinking behind this is basically efficiency of movement. So rather than me having to play a scale like this, see the way I had to move my hand? So that can slow you down if you're trying to play quickly. So the whole idea of having other strings is that you don't have to move your hand, so you can play much more quickly. Oop. So if you use the other strings, you didn't have to move your hand. And so the limit on how quickly you can move is improved by having multiple strings, right? So that's why the strings are tuned to different pitches, is so that you can get everything you need here. Everything you need for your alphabet. You can reach it there without moving your hand. And that's the genius of multiple stringed instruments, is that it enables you to play stuff very quickly without having to move. Okay, so if I was to look at the same kind of thing but for a low G uke, you've got these extra low notes. So down here on the 4th string, so that's the string that's nearest to you if you play right-handed, this stuff here. So it gives you 5 extra notes. Now it does change the kind of tone of the instrument quite a lot to play a low G. Some people prefer it, some people don't. You probably find a lot of guitarists tend to eventually end up playing low G because they just prefer it and it kind of makes sense to them. So I'm not going to try to get in the middle of the infinite unending debate about what's better, low G or high G. But either way, I have you covered here for charts in terms of learning your instrument from the lowest to the highest. If you're playing a low G, that's here, your 4th string open. And I would suggest getting into the routine of every time you pick up your instrument, the first thing you do, tune it. The second thing you do is this. Play your instrument chromatically. It works both as a warm-up and it also teaches you how to play your instrument from low to high. And that is an absolute fundamental thing that you can't really practice enough, because the more you do it, the more intuition you're going to develop for this is low, higher, 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 this is high. So you can kind of then think more like a piano, or from a theory perspective, you would kind of think about your instrument chromatically instead of thinking everything is different. You know a bottom, you know a top. Okay. So brief check-in. Have I lost anybody? Hang on. Thumbs down for I am completely lost. Okay, thumbs ups. Alright, a lot of thumbs up. Okay. We'll soldier on still. Right. That was just basically what I was ranting about there. Yes, the gist of this is that scales get kind of a bad rep. A lot of people, and so does music theory in general, people tend to just let their fears and anxiety get the better of them. Like, if you're learning something, don't expect to be, totally comfortable and amazing at it at first. I mean, it's just like anything else. It has a little bit of a learning curve. But if you can just kind of take a deep breath and go, all right, I'm not going to get freaked out by this. Just like, reread the slide and see if it can make sense. Then you'll be fine. Yes, for me, the best description of what scales are and what they're for is that they are a map. So they are a map on all of the notes that will be correct. And the advantage of knowing that before you put your fingers down and play something is that you get it right the first time. So the thing is with music is, if you've committed to playing something, there's no taking it back. The sound is out there. So if you're just guessworking all the time, going da 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 there, then you've made 3 mistakes before you made the right note, and that's a pretty imperfect or not ideal way to approach playing music, because you're putting an awful lot of weight onto your intuition and your previous experience. But what a scale does is it enables you to think about it beforehand and know all of the possible answers before you go to play the note. So in that sense, I describe it as like a map. So it's a map saying these are the correct notes that you can play. Now you still have choices, you can still pick away from all kinds of options, but you know how to make informed decisions. So what I would compare it to would be, most of you guys, or hopefully all of you guys, would be comfortable with using chord boxes when you play rhythm. Well, basically a scale is to playing melody what a chord box is to playing rhythm. So if you're not afraid of chord boxes, well then you don't need to be afraid of scales. Right, have I confused or scared anybody? Thumbs up. Oh, okay, thumbs up if you're okay, thumbs down if you're scared and terrified. Alright, we're all good. Geez, brave bunch of soldiers today. Okay. So, yeah. Alright, so this going to look a bit of a mess at first, but we'll dig in. So this is your first major scale. So before we jump into learning it properly, we're just going to get used to some of the terminology around scales. So if I was to move up one note, I would say I'm moving a half step. If I was to move 2 notes, I would say I'm moving a whole step. So if you guys hit your ukulele on the first string, open, so that's working from the nut, working from the 0 fret. Now, if I was to hold down the first fret, I would say that I moved a half step. I went from 0 to 1. That would be a half step move. Okay. The other kind of move that I make is if I moved from 0 to 2, I would have moved a whole step. Okay, so we'll try a half step. So 0 to 1. That was a half, and then 0 to 2. That was a whole step. Okay, so that's the terminology that scales are described in: whole steps and half steps. Now you might hear some other people using different terminology like tone, semitone, stuff like that. There's a bunch of different ways that people can talk about it, but for our purposes we're going to talk in whole steps and half steps. So whole steps would be 2, half steps is 1. Now they get abbreviated down to just a letter. So W would be whole steps, so W is 2, and then half, H, would be 1. So if you look down the bottom here, you can see that there's a bunch of W's and H's. So they would be whole steps and they would be half steps. So you can see I've written the numbers underneath because that's another way of looking at it. So a W is a 2 and a H is a 1. And over time, like, I know that's a bit, it's not exactly comfortable in your head right now, but it will become that over time. Alright, now you might be wondering what this or is. So I've just written in an or to indicate the root note. So the root note of the scale is basically the starting point. It is the complete pillar, the center of everything. So it's where it starts and it's where it finishes, the root note. So if we were playing a C major scale, we would play a C note first. That would be our root, and then we go blah 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 blah, and we end up on a C note again. Okay, so the root of that scale would be a C note, and that's why it's called a C major scale, because we started on a note, we played the major scale, and we're done. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say this thing. Root note plus the major pattern gives you or major scale. So a C and then the major pattern would give you a C major scale. A D and the major pattern would give you a D major scale. Alright, thumbs up for following so far. Good stuff. Okay. Sorry, actually, I'll go back up. Right. Yeah, that's that covered. Okay. So this would be the degrees of the major scale. So this is kind of another way of talking about it. Now, what the degrees are, you can kind of think of them as like under your feet, like firm ground, where you're going to land. So the other one is a description of how you move, and the degrees are like what you land on. So if the degrees, or if the wholes and halves were like a movement, like you're jumping, the degrees are where you land. Okay, so we start off with our feet on the ground, on the root note. That would be the first degree. Right, first degree, root note. Then we move a whole step, so that's 2 notes, and that will land us on the ground on the second degree. Now we move a whole and that'll land us on the 3rd degree, and then a half will land us on the 4th degree, a whole will land us on the 5th degree, a whole will land us on the 6th degree, a whole will land us on the 7th degree, and a half will bring us back home to the root note, finishing out the scale on the 8th degree. Sometimes you'll see people refer to this as the 1 again, or the 1st, because it all just starts again in a new octave. So it'll be starting there again. Alright, so that is a bit of a potentially confusing one. Thumbs up if you're still following. I'm kind of half expecting the thumbs to start dropping like flies. Nah, you'll be okay. Okay, so I tell you what, I'm going to try to test people on the major scale. So this formula, if you were to learn it off, you start off on your note and then you would move whole step, half step, and then whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, and that will bring you back home. So the way I try to abbreviate it or remember it, the little trick for remembering that formula, is that you start off on your root note, so you get your feet on the ground, and then you go 2 W's and a H, 3 W's and a H. That's the formula for a major scale. 2 W's, H, 3 W's, H. And if I can remember that much, I'm like, okay, I start on the root note and then I go whole step, which is 2 frets, whole step, 2 frets, half step, 1 fret. I kind of take a little break there, and then I go, okay, here's the 3. Whole step, I take 2 frets, whole step, 2 frets, whole step, 2 frets, half step, 1 fret, and I'm back home. So that can take a couple of attempts to sort of remember. So we'll spend a little bit of time on it. But if we can try to recall it, it's 2 W's and a H, 3 W's and a H, and you're done. So I would describe that as whole, whole, half. Take a break. Whole, 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 half. Okay, so tell you what, we'll start up in the top left window with Betsy. How you doing? So if you press the space bar, I think you should be able to talk for a sec. So
I'm doing great. This is familiar to me. I
Good
studied stuff.
So you've got no excuse if you get it wrong.
Correct. And the other one was ho ho ha, ho 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 ha.
Yep, there's a bunch of different ways of remembering it. People
Ways
have
to remember.
all kinds of ways of remembering
Ho
it.
ho ho ha.
And whatever works for you and gets you to remember it correctly is perfectly fine. This is just the system that I use, but yeah.
Correct.
Okay, we'll start.
It's good. I love your visuals.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll start with you on the top, and we'll work our way across the top row here, okay? So we want to press the space bar to unmute yourself. You ready to go? So Betsy, start us off.
Oh, what was I supposed to do?
You were meant to say the first thing in the major scale. So
The
Okay.
first thing in the major scale is C.
okay,
The
we're gonna.
tonic?
Don't worry about that. Okay, we're just gonna. You start with, just say, whole.
Ho.
Whole, as in WHOLE.
Hole.
Yeah, I know. I have an Irish accent. Okay, you went
No,
whole.
no. I was stuck on the ho ho ho.
Okay, so you start off the scale.
Hole.
Whole. And the next person? So you would be half. Joe? Okay, Joe's one, she's having trouble with her sound. Joe would be half. And then Bernadette.
Whole.
And then Hudson.
Oh,
And then Donal. Whole. That was a whole. And then Chris. And Chris would be a half. Okay. So we're going to start the scale again. So Kevin's going to start the scale. So press unmute. So that was a whole from Kevin. And John? Whole. Yeah, and then Jenny?
Half.
Yeah, and then Pat?
Whole.
And then Brenda?
Whole.
And then Emily?
Whole.
And then Anne? Anne Lane? I think Anne would be a half, okay? And that would finish out the scale. And then Steph would be...
Whole.
And then Miriam?
Whole.
And then Angela? Angela's would be a half. And then Rachel? I think that was a whole. And then Geraldine would be a whole. And then Carmen
Whole.
would be a half. I think, unless I've gotten confused. Alright, we'll start. In case I've made a mistake there and had a brain fart, we'll start again on somebody with the very, very Lily friendly name of Galaxy A5. Okay. So whole Saskia. Whole Geraldine. Half Ken. So Ken. Whole, yeah. Andy. Andy's would be whole. Lou.
Half.
Yeah, and Federico.
Whole.
Whole. Karen. Whole. And Joachim. And then the last one. Half will be
Half.
Joachim. That's it.
Half.
And that's probably enough of that. So, whew, that's an ambitious moving around the classroom. Okay. But I try to like drill that so that it becomes comfortable. Because the reason it's very, very important to know the major scale perfectly well, to be able to say it without any trouble, is that all of the other scales are described as deviations away from the major scale. So it's like if a person started learning music, they just went like, the major scale is the center of everything. And everything is going to be described as a deviation away from that. So if you were to get confused about your starting point, that could be a problem. So if we have a look at putting it in C, where did all these dots come from? Did I scribble all over my own sheets? Maybe I did. Anyway. Weird. Can you even do that? I don't know. Right, so... Oh, it must be from the...
It's just from the screen. It's something you did here. It's not on your original.
Okay. Alright, so let's take a look at the C major scale. So this would be the first one that people would learn on pretty much any instrument. And you can see it written as degrees like we had it before. So you got your familiar starting off on your root and you go whole, it's the second degree, whole, third degree, half, fourth degree, whole, fifth degree, whole, sixth degree, whole, seventh degree, half, and you're back home. Okay, so that would be it written as degrees. If you were to start applying that to a note, if you started on a C, you would get C as your first degree, and then you would move a whole step, would give you a D, whole step would give you E, half step would give you F, whole step would give you G, whole step would give you A, whole step would give you B, and half step would be C. Okay, so that's it just as notes. Now, if we were to attach that to the ukulele, you would get your first scale along the C string. So if you hit your C string open, alright, so that would be the root. And then if we move a whole step, so this would be the second fret, it would be a D. And if you move a whole step, it'll bring you to E. And then a half step will bring you to F. a whole step will bring you to G, a whole step to A, a whole step to B, and then a half step to C. Okay. So that would be a C major scale played along one string on the uke. Okay, so hang on a sec. Sorry there. Somebody unmuted somewhere. Alright. So that will be along one string. Right. Now, do you remember earlier on we went through the trouble of learning our instrument chromatically? So we went from low to high. And we saw that using multiple strings meant we could do anything we wanted just here. Just in this sort of area. Okay, well we're going to use that. Now, instead of going and having to move our hands, we're going to make use of the other strings. And if you do that, you end up with this shape. Okay, so we'll hit our first degree, which is our C string open, and then we hit our second degree, which just coincidentally happens to be the second fret. And then we're going to hit our third degree. Now our third degree along one string would be here, but we're not going to use that string anymore. We're going to use this string, the second string. Okay, so that second string here would be that string open. Right, you can see it there on the screen, number 3. And then we would have the 4th degree, and then the 5th degree, and then we would change string, 6th degree, 7th degree, and 8th degree. Okay, so that's the shape that we're going to become very familiar with, because that is our major scale. That is the most common shape used for your major scales. Okay, so some of you guys may be familiar with the idea of bar chords. And what's happening with a bar chord? What's happening with a bar chord is that you're playing a chord down here, and you can see that the nut is holding down things there. So the nut is kind of doing a job, and then you're adding things onto it. Now when you play a bar chord, your finger, your index finger, becomes the nut, and you simply slide that up, and it goes up the alphabet. So what was an A major chord down here, down at 0, becomes A sharp major, B major, C major, C sharp major, D major, D sharp major, etc., all the way up the alphabet. So just to get a gauge on the room, was what I just did there a new concept for any of you? If it was a new concept, give me a thumbs up. Okay, good few people. Right. So that's kind of a big deal. Like I would have a whole section or lesson on like bar chords and how everything can be walked up the neck. As long as you remember to bring your index finger with you. So bring the nut with you. When I teach kids this, I usually describe it as, what does the squirrel do? He doesn't forget to bring the nut. The squirrel brings the nut. Okay? Works pretty well for adults too. But that idea that we can walk stuff up the neck it's not gonna just apply for bar chords. It's going to apply for scale shapes as well. So what we're going to do here is learn one shape for a major scale. So it's going to be that shape. And if you take a look at the slideshow, that shape there. And you're looking at it as degrees right now, so that would be a first degree, a second degree, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. So because we started on this note and we finished on the same note, both of those are C notes, this would be a C major scale. But what we really want to do is learn it as a shape, so that as we walk, actually I better go back so you can see me, as we walk this shape up, like that was started on a C, so C major. If I started here on the first fret, that note is a C sharp note. Now if I play the same shape, that was a C sharp major scale. Alright, if I moved up another note and started from here, this would be a D note. And if I played the major scale shape, that would be a D major scale. Okay, so if I moved up another one, that would be a D sharp note. And if I played the shape, that would be a D sharp major scale. And up another note would be E major scale. Okay. So can I get a thumbs up if that was a new concept? Alright, that's a lot of thumbs. Okay. So I know you're at least learning something. Right. Yeah, okay. I'm tempted to go down a bit of a rabbit hole there, but I will resist. I will stay on topic.
Even if we know it, it helps to reinforce it. And, you know, I learned this stuff from Craig and Sarah, but seeing it in a different light, in a different context, it helps get it into the brain. So
the thing is, this learning it this way is more universal. So this carries over to other instruments. So if you've ever been in the frustrating situation of being at like a family event or something, and some person who like, oh yeah, I play a bit of music, and they pick up an instrument that they've never played, and they ask what's the tuning, and the person tells the tuning, and they just like, and then they just like fly away playing something amazing on the instrument. They're approaching it from this perspective. So they learn it as theory, and they know it as theory. And then when they go to apply it to a new instrument, there's a couple of things they have to figure out. It'll generally take them about 60 seconds or something like that. They'll figure out the tuning, they'll figure out a major scale, they'll get the notes of chords, like a major triad. They'll get a first, a third, and a fifth out of it, and that'll give them their major chords. And then they'll have their minor chords, and they just go. Then they start using chord progression theory, and suddenly they're flying away on an instrument they've never played before. And that can be very frustrating to look at, because you're like, this is clearly witchcraft. It's like, you are not human. But they are. They're just using a system. That would be the big advantage to learning stuff from the perspective of theory, than just put your fingers here, hit the strings make the sound. Learning it that way is a much slower learning curve. Okay, so the reason we would learn as a scale shape like this is that we can then walk it up the neck. Now, if we want to do that, it would behoove us to use this system. Now, it's going to feel absolutely strange at first, but the way I do it is that even when I'm playing stuff down, all the way down the bottom of the neck, I still put my index finger behind the nut. So when I'm playing, if I'm playing a C major scale, I don't allow myself to use this finger. And that's counterintuitive as hell, because everything in you wants to use your best finger. This is like leaving Michael Jordan on the bench. This is just like, it feels so counterintuitive, but it is for the greater good of the team. So I would put my index finger here in this absolutely useless position behind the nut, and I would get used to the scale using these 3 fingers. Now the reason I would do that is that when I go to move this up, nothing changes, so that I learn all of my scales using one shape. So even if it's all the way down at 0, still put your finger there, so that you only learn one scale shape. Because if you give in to yourself and you start using your index finger, well, then you get, and you start to like second guess what finger to use, and you're like, damn it, am I on that one or am I on that one? Like, you're learning 2 different scale shapes, and you don't need to do that. Just put your index finger behind the nut, stick to it, and there's only one answer. Okay, so it seems a bit strict and everything at first, but if you can stick to this good habit, it's a really good one to get into. I actually use it for bar chords as well. I leave my index finger behind the nut for chords when I'm playing open position. Yeah, I should probably spend just a second on that, because you might get a lot out of it. So what I was saying there was, even when I'm playing normal chords down the bottom, check out my index finger behind the nut, because when I go to do bar chords, nothing changes. So what I'm playing down here is the same as when I'm barring. Does that make sense? Okay. Anyway, that's a bit of a diversion. But what I was trying to get into was this good habit of putting your index finger behind the nut. That means that anything that's happening on the 1st fret will be my middle finger. Anything happening on the 2nd fret will be my ring finger. Anything happening on my 3rd fret will be my baby finger. You guys probably call that a pinky, but baby finger. And if you were to play that same scale with notes, in case you're curious, starting on a C, ending on a C, using the major shape, that would be a C major scale. So that's that scale that we played earlier, going up along one string. That was this played in a shape. Alright, so what about scales that don't start on C? So if a scale was to start on a different note, it would be the same formula, same pattern, but we're just starting on a D note. So you can see the same formula up the top here, same degrees, but starting on D. Now this one isn't like the very pleasant, easy C major scale. This one is going to have some sharps in it. You can see there's a sharp here and there's a sharp here. But the sharps aren't any different when you start to think of music this way. They're not a big deal. It's just a different name. It's just a name for a note. Okay, so if we start on D on the ukulele neck, which would be 3rd string, 2nd fret, and you move a whole step to E, whole step to F sharp, half step to G, whole step to A, whole step to B. I've run out of frets. Time for a bigger uke. Whole step to C sharp, half step to D. Okay, can I get a quick thumbs up if that made sense? Good stuff. Alright, so if we were to then use the scale shape, that major shape that we'd learned, it would involve, we start off on the 3rd string, 2nd fret, that's a D note. And then we're going to use our major scale shapes. So first degree, second degree, third degree, fourth degree, fifth degree, sixth degree, seventh degree, and eighth degree. So even though what we're looking at here is notes, thank you, I would find it more confusing or more challenging to think of things in terms of note names. I don't think in note names anymore, really. I think mostly in degrees. And things become way more useful when you think of them in terms of degrees. A lot of people get very fixated on, like, I have to know the name of the note. But with this system, you kind of don't, really. You go to a root note, and then you're dealing in numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the reason it's very good to start thinking of terms in terms of scale degrees is that the terminology, those numbers, they are used in chord names. So they overlap with chord names. So if you ever saw, I'll give you an example. If you can have a look at my hand. This is a slight segue, so don't worry if this melts your brain. Apologies if it does. I probably shouldn't do it for that reason, but I'm gonna. So if I was down here playing a C major scale, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I don't know if you noticed, but that was the 6 that was the 6th degree of a C major scale. That makes sense? Well then, C6. So what was the 8th degree? 8, 7, 6. So we had the C major on these 3 strings, and then we were adding a new note, a 6. So if you've ever wondered why people call that a C6 chord, it's using the number from the scale degree. Anyway, there's a whole long workshop in that one. So don't worry if that didn't make sense, but we'll get back to what we're doing. So this D major scale. So you ready to try and play it along with me? So we start on the D. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. D major. And if we were to use an example that didn't start on C or D, take another example. If we started on an A note, so that's what it would look like written out on one string, because I basically can't fit it on the C string if I write it up. But if you were to do it on the way we've been doing everything so far, you go up along the 3rd string until you find an A note, which is pretty high up on the neck, and it's going to be on the 9th fret. So if you have reference dots, just one down from that dot, that's the 9th fret. That would be an A note. So we're going to try to play an A major scale using the shape. So ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there's actually a bunch of sharps in that one. So if we were to use the note names, it would sound like this. It will be A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Okay. So you can see why it's easier just to count to 8 than it is to use note names. Like, significantly easier. Right. Was that section doable? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if it wasn't. Alright. Soldiering on, so. Yeah. The gist of this slide is that as long as you can find the note along the 3rd string, and you physically have room to play that shape, then you can play any of the major scales. You just go to the correct root note, play the shape, that's the major scale for that note. Alright. So now that you've learned so much more than just the major scale shape, you've learned the system at this point, or most of the system for scales. So you have the hard work under your belt. Yeah, this is sort of a disclaimer that make sure you're completely comfortable with both finding the note of any major scale and the concept of scale degrees before proceeding. That seems like a very stern warning when I read it back. But the idea is this, that we have a look at this and see can we get people to go through it. Hang on a sec. Right. Hang on, I want you to find it visible. Right. Okay. Okay, this is going to be your turn to pick this out. Right. So, if anyone wants to hit the spacebar and pick a note, or will I select someone? Okay. Betsy, do you want to pick us a note? And we're going to do a major scale.
Sure, I'm picking F.
Okay, we'll start on F. So if we start on F, then we're going to use our major scale now. I'll just demonstrate this one first to make sure. So F, and then I would move a whole step to G, a whole step to A, and then we got to go all the way back over here, and a half step to A sharp. Hang on a sec, I'm getting lots of sound there.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'll start that again. So F, and then we get a whole step to G, whole step to A, back to the start, half step to A sharp, whole step to C, whole step to D, whole step to E, half step to F. Does that make sense? Okay, now some of you may have noted, some of you being very strict and formally taught may have picked up on me using incorrect descriptions there, because I should have used flats, but I didn't. Okay, I'm only going to use sharps just for the sake of clarity for new people, okay? So what happened there was I was on F, and I went whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. All right. So we're going to take a different note. See what we get. All right, pick somebody at random. Go on. Hudson, will you give us a letter?
Go with G.
Okay, so we'll start on G. Do you want to try and do the major scale? So I'm just describing it in words, so no pressure.
So, yeah. So I've been just noodling on the shapes. So I was gonna now think back as letters.
No worries.
So B G A B C D E F sharp G sharp. No G.
Back to G. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. So if somebody else wants to pick another note, so go on, hit the spacebar. Feel brave. Just pick any of the notes. All right, I'm gonna single you out. Pat, go on. Oops. Go on, pick a letter, any letter, as long as it's not after G.
E.
Okay, E. So if I started on E, here we go. Whole step to F sharp, whole step to G, half step to A, And then we're going to skip all the way back down here. Whole step to B, whole step to C sharp, whole step to D sharp, half step E. Alright, so that's just like a test of the formula stuff. Now, I understand that this formula way is a bit heady. There's a lot of different balls being juggled in the air. But if you can remember it, it's exactly the same stuff we were doing earlier. We're just applying it to the alphabet. And it's what's going to happen every time you play a major scale. Now, because a lot of you guys are probably relatively experienced ukulele players who are kind of new to this, you might find it easiest to do it physically on the instrument rather than just doing it in your brain with letters. So feel free to learn the scale physically. Like, this is how if I have a lot of time, this is usually how I get people to drill it. I would get them to say it and play it up along one string. So once you get used to playing the formula along one string, it's a lot easier to remember. And anytime I do a new scale with people, I always get them to play it along one string so that they get the formula in their head. And all that's going to happen with different scales is that it's going to be a different pattern as you work your way up along the string. And as long as you take them relatively slowly and you don't bite off too much, you just take one scale and learn it gradually.
There is a function where you can hover over somebody and spotlight them. It's like called spotlight. So, and that will be for everyone, not just for you. Hitting is just for you, I think.
Okay. I think we got a brief insight into the other workshop. So, right.
Question mark.
Yeah?
Mark,
Yeah.
what happens to the box shape when you have a low G?
You would use a different shape if you wanted to use that string. So that's the thing. Most ukulele players play high G. So if you play high G, it's the weird thing when you're playing melody. This string, hang on, I'll show you on a high G. So on a high G, this string would be largely useless. Yeah, because do you remember how we're trying to think from our lowest note to our highest?
Still the top three strings.
Yeah, if we were playing from our lowest to our highest, it would work from that string down. Because the thing is, the note that's created by that high G string, it actually lies in the middle, in between these two strings. So it's kind of useless, because we've already got those notes covered. So this guy doesn't offer anything new when we're playing melody on a high G. So I tend to actually just abandon that string when I'm playing melody, because it's useless. Like, I have everything already covered comfortably in here, basically. So on a high G, this would be useless. On a low G, yeah, you have the chance to get 2 octaves on a low G. I would use a different scale shape. So that's a whole different kettle of fish. but it is like, just like we did with the C shape for the high G, we can just learn another way of doing it. So that's a different scale shape, but it's the same kind of thing. And yeah, exactly, all the same stuff applies. Like, you just learn that shape and then you walk it up the neck. So it is a big advantage, those extra 5 notes. It is quite cool to have those extra notes, and melody players do like to have the sort of intuitiveness of their notes going, like, if they start going high down to low, that this string is actually useful. It is kind of nice to be able to go da 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 and still have the sound go down, as opposed to da 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 da, which happens with the high G, and it's not particularly useful. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next bit, and I need to come back and look at this particular graph, or maybe just abandon it, because I think that people find that one confusing.
Just don't play the melody, just ignore the string, isn't it?
Yeah,
Huh?
you can take it out of the equation.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually, before I move on to the next one, basically I would normally spend a good bit of time testing people on that one, getting them to test themselves, so that they really apply that formula to the alphabet. And ideally, that's where I would kind of break the lesson and give people time to go work on it. But we're trying to cram a lot into a short period of time here, so I'm going to soldier on. If this becomes a little bit academic, so be it. So we're going to take a look at the minor scale next. So actually, one more point before we move on to the minor scale. I need to put this in some kind of context for you guys, because you can be going like, right, great, that's great, I know how to play a major scale up and down the neck. And even if that's all you take away from it, that's something very significant. Because any song that's playing in a major key, those are going to be the notes that you can select. Those are the notes that everything is going to be made of. As long as it doesn't leave the key that it's in, the song... If a song is in the key of C major, well then I know that all of these 8 notes are going to fit with what's being played. So I tell you what, Hudson, can you just strum a C major for me a bunch of times? So I'm going to be out of time, but you, Hudson, you just trust me that I'm playing in time, okay? Go on.
Do you want a different pattern?
No, just give me a load of C majors. Keep going. Okay, Zoom keeps like crushing your audio when I play, so...
Yeah.
But the idea is that whenever somebody is playing a C major, that you know all of the notes that are going to be correct. And if they're playing D major, you know all the notes that are correct. If they're playing E major, F major, once you know your scale okay, you kind of have the cheat sheet for all of the notes that will work. And that might seem like a bit of an academic thing, but what this means is that if you're hearing rhythm and melody being played, somebody is playing a scale. Whether they know it or not, they're keeping within the confines of the scale. Unless they play something that sounds really unusual. If they're playing something that sounds really unusual, then it has left the scale, or has left the key. It's playing something outside of the key. But the vast majority of music that you're going to hear is going to be in the same key. And this means that the scales will work. If you're looking for some examples of some very shorthand ones of like, where can I see a C major scale being used? You know, Wild World, Cat Stevens, you know that little riff? Descending C major. He's literally just descending a scale. So if you go, why do you practice your scales? If you want to play Wild World, okay? But it's not just that example, it's all examples. That's the point. This is the underpinning system that is music. And you had, like, if you gave all those thumbs up and you weren't secretly a thumbs down, then like you've got it. You've got all the stuff that you need to get involved in playing music this way. That's the hard part done, is learning the theory. You've got it. So now that you understand what those numbers are, that's the key. That's how all of this scale stuff is discussed. Okay. Yeah, that's probably enough of a description or a justification. It's all music. Anyway, if we were to look at the next most commonly used scale, which would be called the natural minor scale. Now, there's a couple of different variations on the minor scale, but this is the most commonly used one. This is the one you're going to encounter most of the time, the natural minor. Now, you can see that it's got a slightly different formula than the last one we had, and you can learn it that way if you like. You can learn it as a whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. It's still W's and H's. It's just like it was with the major scale, but it's a slightly different ordering. You can see that the half step kind of shows up a little early. So it's W, H, W, W, H, W, W. Yeah, a bit tricky, but a different way to think of it, and I would argue kind of a more pragmatic and more useful way to think of it, would be to look at it as degrees. So, do you remember earlier on when I talked about the major scale and I said it's very important to know your major scale thoroughly, because every other scale is described as a deviation away from the major scale. Well, here is a good example of that. You see that it's if we were to go with a major scale, it would go whole, whole, and this would be the 3. But we don't get that. Instead, in the minor scale, this is the note that's played. But I don't know if you can see quite so clearly, but it is described as a flat 3. So it's described in relation. Sorry. Where's it gone? Yeah. So it's described in relationship to the major scale. So it's not given like a name all of its own. It's described as a flat 3. Because this third has been flattened. It's been moved down. Right. So, dare I even ask now? Thumbs up or thumbs down? How did that make sense? Medium. Medium. Okay. Some thumbs up, some thumbs down. Right. This is I'm gonna put it. If I were to take a look at the major scale again. Here. If I were to take a look at the major scale, it would be whole, whole. Right, that's where the 3rd degree is. It was a whole step there. But what happens on the minor scale is that we only get a half step. So this is the note that's played on a minor scale. So it's being described in relation to its major scale. It's being described as a flat 3. So it's not given like some unique name, it's just a flattened 3rd. So that's why it's important to know your major scale, because other scales are going to be described in how they differ from the major scale. So the minor scale went 1, 2, flat 3. So if we have a look at it, 1, 2, flat 3. And then a whole step to the 4. Alright, so did that make any more sense than the last time I described it? A little bit? Okay. Alright, anyone who has stuck around this long and is still giving honest thumbs, you have my respect. Because this is a lot of ground to cover. What we've done so far could easily be split into 3 or 4 classes. So you are definitely doing exceptionally well if you're still going. And if we were to look at this, you guys might find it a little bit easier to do it physically on the instrument. Now we're not going to have the luxury of having a lot of time to spend on this, but if we were to play it on the instrument, you can take all the time you like. Anyone who wants this stuff, you can send me an email and I'll add you to the slideshow, and you can look back at it any time you want. And I would suggest doing that and just taking your time to go through it, rather than rushing through like I'm doing now, where we are covering an incredible amount of ground. But if you can make sense of this slide, it's the minor formula, or the natural minor formula, and when you play it as a scale shape, you will get something like right. So if I was to play this one, I would put my index finger behind the nut and play. This is going to be a C natural minor scale. So open, and then that D note, and then the flat E. Okay, now we're going to change string. We're going to go to the second string, and we're going to play that F note on the first fret. And then we're going to use our baby finger for the G note, and then A flat, and then the B flat on the first fret, and then the C. Okay, so you would have to spend quite a bit of time to get used to that shape. That's a new scale shape. That would be the natural minor scale shape. So you can see it sounds very different to the major scale. And it would be used to basically play over any minor chords. Or in a minor key. If somebody's playing something in a minor key, these are the notes that would work. So if somebody was playing a song in C minor, alright. So really the benefit of what you've gotten so far is an introduction to the system of scales. And it's been done formally. If in case you're wondering, is there any more abstract, crazy stuff? No, like this is it. Like you've done the hard part. I would, if you were to like come out of this and go, what am I going to practice? I would say, send Mark an email. He'll add you to this file, and then just take your time, going through slide by slide, and making sure that you're comfortable on each part before you go on to the next part. And if you were to do something practically, it would be maybe to play the major scale up along one string so that you get used to the formula, and then practice it as a shape. The third thing to do, if you wanted to do it, would be to take out your phone on like a memo recording app and just record yourself playing C major for 2 minutes, and then press play, and then play your C major scale. Get really used to going up and down your C major scale so that it becomes totally comfortable, and that way you can get quicker and quicker and quicker at it, and more comfortable. Then I would maybe try it in D. So record yourself playing D for a minute, and then try the D major scale, and then take out a new one, record yourself playing E, try it on an E. The next thing I'd do after that would be to start to differentiate, or start to use different scale degrees. You'll probably notice at first when you're trying to make something up, when you're trying to improvise, you'll probably notice that your decisions, they sound kind of crazy and chaotic. They won't sound wrong because they'll be within the scale, but they'll sound a bit like lost, for want of a better term. It'll be like, you'll be making just it'll just sound random. But what you'll notice over time is that you'll start to prefer certain notes over other ones. So if somebody was playing a C chord, be like, I would find myself over time drifting towards 1, 3, 5. Now the reason I would start to prefer those notes is that those are notes that are actually in my chord already. So the first degree, the third degree, and the fifth degree are all there in my major chord. So they'll sound very stable. Now, if I was to select the second degree, or the fourth degree, or the sixth, those ones are going to sound a bit more unstable. They're going to sound a little bit airy and complicated. So, in relation to a C major chord. They kind of contrast kind of strongly. So over time you develop a sense of purpose for each degree, or a sense of mood or tone or feeling or vibe or whatever word you like to attach to it. But you're going to associate, like, oh, a 4 would be nice here because a 4 is kind of airy, or a 6 is going to sound nice here because it would sound a little ambiguous, or a 7 would sound good here because it's really tense, and I want to have a tense thing before I resolve it. And you develop kind of a library of feelings towards each degree, and that's when you start to come up with good stuff. You start to make intelligent, informed decisions when you're not just picking random notes from a scale. You're going, I want this to be stable, 1, 3, 5. I want this to be tense, 7, 6. I want this to be airy, 2, 4. And you start to tell a story, like, depending, one will follow the next, Other things, like, if a note is like a neighboring degree, like 1, 2 would make sense, 3 would make sense, 4, 5. What you're doing is spoon feeding something they're expecting to hear. So that's another thing. You can start to give people predictable things, or you can give them something unpredictable and unexpected. Like if somebody's going 1, 2, the thing you're probably going to expect to hear next would be 3. But if you want to surprise somebody, jump to 7. Like, you start to make decisions about what you're trying to do. You're trying to tell a story most of the time. And the weird thing is that music, a lot of the time, it's using similar tools to like movie writing and screenwriting, like beginning, middle, and end, setup, problem, resolution. Like, that's the 3-act structure in storytelling. Like, if I was somebody playing C, I would probably start on C. The setup. Yeah, I'm with you, buddy. C. And then I'm gonna go somewhere else. Ooh, like, what's that? Ugh. I'm tense. Where does this want to go? It wants to go home. It wants to go back to the root. So you start to develop a vocabulary, and you use that vocabulary to tell a story. And that's an element of improvisation that's not there in other areas. Like, I mean, there's not a lot of choice. If you're playing rhythm, you're kind of stuck to the chord. I mean, you can use different voicings of it, but you don't have quite as much leeway with chords as you do in improvising melody. Melody, you always have a choice of, if you're using a diatonic scale, like one of these scales that we've been doing, you've got a choice of, like, yeah, if you want to stay within 1 octave, 7 or 8 choices at any given moment. and it's up to you. Like, do you want to use a 1, a 3, a 5, a 2, a 4, a 6, 7, like, and each one of them carries a consequence. That sounds like a lot of information. It probably was. Here, I'm gonna feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. Is there any questions so far? I might just dip into this just to give a really speed view of the rest of the slideshow, just to show you the kind of ground that you can cover next. But if you want to chime in with any questions, you can do it now. Anyone? Yay, nay? Alright, so you've got everything you need, and your homework today, should you choose to accept it, is to go and learn your major scale and get used to it, and then maybe record a little backing track of you playing for 60 seconds and play your scales over it. Once you've gotten used to the scales, then you can start to improvise, and you'll discover all these things. You'll start to notice that a 1, 3, 5 will be more stable and feel comfortable and nice. It'll sound a lot nicer than a 7 or a 6. 7 or 6 would sound kind of tense. Right. And if you want to go on from that, you can learn your minor scale. You've got the formula there. Your natural minor. And if you want to continue on, there's a bunch more scales. So in the rest of the slideshow is basically the payoff for all that work you have done. It goes through, yeah, I've just written it here as I've put this thing called the chromatic scale. I've written it above all of the scales just as a reference, basically, so you can see where the gaps are. Like, this would be what it would look like if you played every single note going up along your instrument, and the other ones are where there's gaps. Okay, so if you were to do something called a major arpeggio, they would be the notes of your major chord. If you were to do a minor arpeggio, that kind of stuff. So that would be playing the notes of a chord. That's what arpeggios are. Okay, so that would be major arpeggios, minor arpeggios. There's the 3 different kinds, or commonly used kinds, of minor scales. There's major and minor pentatonics. There's major and minor blues scales. That's all the most common scales used and that I would regularly encounter. And I have contact details if you want to ask me any questions. Promo stuff for the festival. Right, this Patreon is where I post all of these graphics and stuff as I come up with them and all these ideas. I have a few recap videos actually. So if you are more into tab and stuff, I have things like recapping playing the C major scale and recapping the C natural minor scale with tabs and with the degrees and all that in videos, and it's kind of nice and slow. So if you want to have a look at them, they're all there. The Patreon, I put a lot of free stuff on Patreon just because I'm kind of trying to build it up. Yeah, and that's it. There's more stuff like the modes and things like that if you want to follow me. I do all that stuff. Oh, I should probably plug lessons as well. Also, I've gone online with lessons, so I've stopped doing classroom lessons because I'm not going to spread the plague. But yeah, I teach online, so anyone get in touch if you want to do lessons. Is there any other stuff? Yeah, I just wanted to kind of give you some context of how this is useful. I feel like I got kind of pretty heavy into the teaching and the theory and the academic stuff, but I didn't really show you what it's for all that much. Like, it is infinitely useful. If somebody was playing C major, I'll show you what I could do with different scales. So this is why you would bother learning the different scales. Right, C major. Sorry, I should probably just play an instrument where I can reach the frets. Major scale, minor scale. So that would be for somebody playing C minor. If I wanted to play pentatonics, so C major, whoops. If I wanted to go major blues, if I wanted to do minor blues, if I wanted to do, if you go far enough into like modes, they're kind of the last stuff I teach. There's major would be Ionian, Lydian, mixed Lydian. There's these are all options that become available to you. On the minor end, there would be Dorian. There would be Aeolian, which would be natural minor. There's did I forget one? Oh, Phrygian and Locrian, which would be a half diminished. Right, there's all kinds of mad stuff, but where you'll probably really have lots of fun is actually if you get into blues stuff. So learning your major pentatonics, your minor pentatonics, the major blues, and the minor blues. Those are four. They're actually almost the same thing. There's only one note extra for the blues ones. So this would be major pentatonic. And for the blues, after that note, you add that one. That's the blues. So major blues. And it sounds like a very strange scale, but when you start to throw it in, it's like, ooh, that's kind of playful. Like, it's really fun. It can't make up its mind whether it's happy or sad. Right. And it is a lot more fun to zone out and start messing around with scales than it is to just sort of zone out with chords. Chords are comparatively restrictive, but if you're playing lead, the world is your oyster, and it's up to you. A lot of people can't even tell if you're doing it right or not. The further you get into it, the more it's like, were you playing the wrong notes there? It's like, no, I was playing spicy notes. That was like the Vindaloo of scales. When you start playing like Locrian modes and Phrygian and all this stuff, they all have mad names. They all have like really intimidating names, and it's just like, what if somebody's going like, yeah, just do it in C mixed Lydian, you'd be like, ugh. But all it is it's a name for a scale. It's just exactly like it is the major scale with that tweaked, that up, that down. That's it. And if you're comfortable on the major scale, then you can go like, all right, I can do a major scale, but raise my fourth or something like that. It's like, it's not a big deal. All right, so yeah, I've run out of time. It's absolutely mad trying to teach all this stuff in an hour and a half, and you guys are true veterans. I feel like I should send you like a medal if you're still hanging around, like a little badge here that will just be like, I survived Mark's scales theory course, and you can go around for the rest of the festival and be like, yeah, let me see yours. You're just like, I've seen things, man. I've seen things. You weren't there, man. Exactly. All right, so thank you guys. Thanks for sticking with me. There's a ton of stuff left. I think there's still a space in a bunch of the workshops. So if you want to book one of the free tickets, they're going to remain open all the way until the workshop actually ends. So you can still get into a bunch of the workshops if you like. In terms of the like really interesting ones, if you want to do something that's probably a bit more easy on the brain, there's really interesting ones like Introduction to Finger Picking and stuff like that, although that one might be sold out. There's stuff like the Latin Rhythms one, looks like it's going to be good. So Victor, he's like a cool flamenco player, and he's going to be doing Latin rhythms, so like rumba strums and stuff like that, and that should be really cool. But if you're free this evening, there's going to be a gala performance by a lot of people doing the workshops. So you've got the likes of Victor and stuff like that, and myself and Lily are going to do a set that we've prepared, semi-prepared. I'll give you a laugh. We practiced it last night, and I put a dot beside all the ones that I made a mistake on. It was the whole set. So I'm going to go practice frantically. But yeah, the workshops are there. The gala stuff begins at like half seven, something like that. And there's going to be like some cool performances, so it's worth tuning in or leaving on in the background while you're making dinner. And then tomorrow is a big jam session, so God only knows what's going to happen there. Yeah, there's going to be a free-for-all crazy jam session. I assume it might be like pass the mic in Zoom or something like that, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, thanks for sticking with me. Enjoy the rest of the fest. Do you have any questions before I go?
No, thank you. That was very good.
No
We'll
worries.
follow you somewhere.
Very good.
Yeah, actually, you can follow me on Mark's Ukulele Tips on all the social media stuff. The Patreon page where I stick up like everything that I do. I stick some of it up on Facebook just to sort of like bring people in. But yeah, it's lovely to see us all. I'm kind of delighted that so many people stayed and stuck around as well. Fair play to you.
Yeah, 12 stayed on.
All right. Thanks a million,
you,
guys.
Mark.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Mark.
I'll talk to you soon. Follow me on all the stuff, all right? Cheers.
Mark,
Thanks, Betsy. Thanks, everybody. See you later.